Half of you are going to disagree with our order today. That's the fun part. All right, let's not waste any more time. Let's start counting down. Starting all the way at number 30, Elaine Welteroth. Let's kick things off with a wedding dress that proves you don't need a couture house to make bridal history. Elaine Welteroth, the former editor-in-chief of Teen Vogue and a genuine style authority in her own right, got married in May of 2020, right in the thick of early pandemic lockdowns. She and her now husband, Jonathan Singletary, held their ceremony on the stoop of their Brooklyn brownstone with around 200 friends and neighbors watching from a careful, socially distanced sidewalk gathering, and even more people tuning in over Zoom. Here's the twist that makes this entry so special. Welteroth didn't commission a custom gown. She pulled a dress straight out of her own closet, one she hadn't worn in roughly 3 years. Her veil belonged to her mother. Her shoes were custom-made, but everything else about the look was deeply, intentionally personal. The mantra she and her husband set for the whole event was essentially, do the best you can with what you have. And that philosophy shaped every choice, right down to the dress. In a decade that's about to show you gowns that took nearly 2,000 hours to construct, it feels important to start with a reminder that some of the most iconic bridal moments in recent memory were built on sentiment, not spectacle. It's a beautiful, almost rebellious way to open this list, and it set a tone that a lot of pandemic-era brides would follow. It's also worth remembering just how unusual 2020 was for weddings across the board, not just in Hollywood but everywhere. Venues shut down overnight, guest lists got slashed from hundreds down to a dozen or fewer, and couples who had spent months, sometimes years, planning elaborate ceremonies suddenly had to reimagine everything in a matter of weeks. Welteroth's stoop wedding became something of a cultural touchstone precisely because of how gracefully she handled that shift, turning a moment of forced limitation into something that still felt intentional and beautiful. Vogue covered the wedding extensively at the time, and Welteroth later reflected that not overthinking the dress ended up being one of the best decisions she made all year. It's a genuinely lovely place to begin a countdown that's about to get a whole lot more extravagant. Number 29. Lily Allen. Sticking with that same pandemic energy, we're heading to Las Vegas for British singer Lily Allen's wedding to Stranger Things star David Harbour. With social distancing rules and mask mandates in full effect across the world in 2020, the couple made the very of-the-moment decision to elope at the Graceland Wedding Chapel, the same iconic Vegas venue that's married everyone from Elvis fans to spontaneous celebrity couples for decades. After the ceremony, the newlyweds famously stopped for an in-out burger run with Allen's daughters in tow, which honestly might be the most 2020 wedding reception imaginable. The dress itself was a double-breasted cream wool crepe piece from Dior's Cruise 2020 collection, featuring black buttons and a matching belt that channeled a chic, retro 60s aesthetic. She completed the look with a simple tulle veil and platform heels, proving that unconventional choices can create an absolute masterclass in timeless, effortless bridal fashion history. There's something genuinely funny and kind of wonderful about the energy of that day. The Vegas elopement had almost a punk rock energy to it, quick, minimal, entirely on the couple's own terms, right down to that fast food stop afterward. Her outfit choice by comparison was steeped in classic style, balancing high-end French couture with a totally casual, carefree setting. Harbour himself has never shied away from a bit of theatrical flair when talking about their wedding day, describing the whole experience in characteristically dramatic terms. It tells a story about modern celebrity marriage that a lot of couples on this list would go on to echo. A quiet, private moment to make it official without any of the traditional industry pressure, creating a massive, lasting cultural impact through pure, unadulterated, and memorable simplicity and charm. Number 28. Issa Rae. Number 28 takes us to the south of France, where Insecure creator and star Issa Rae married entrepreneur Louis Diam in a wedding that felt like a masterclass in romantic elegance. For her ceremony look, Rae turned to Vera Wang, and the result was an exceptionally stunning strapless ivory ball gown with a sweetheart neckline, covered in hand-placed Chantilly lace and finished with hand-sewn crystal beading. What makes this dress worth talking about isn't just the craftsmanship, although there was plenty of that. It's the way Ray used the moment to showcase two completely different bridal aesthetics in a single day. After the ceremony itself, she changed into a second look, also by Vera Wang. This one, an Italian silk crepe A-line gown with a plunging V-neckline for the reception. It's become a defining trend of this entire era of celebrity weddings. The ceremony gown and the reception gown serving two totally different purposes, one for tradition and vows, one for dancing and photos. Ray's pairing did both jobs beautifully, and it cemented Vera Wang's status as one of the most trusted names in bridal fashion heading into the 2020s, a reputation she is going to reinforce more than once on this list. It's worth pointing out just how much creative control Ray exercised over her entire wedding image, something that tracks closely with her public persona as a writer, producer, and showrunner who has always insisted on shaping her own narrative. Rather than leaning on a single, predictable celebrity bride look, she used her wedding as an opportunity to show two distinct sides of her personal style within a matter of hours. The south of France setting only amplified the romance of it all. Sun-drenched, intimate, and specifically chosen to feel worlds away from the pace of her usual Los Angeles life. It's a wedding that fashion writers still cite as one of the most tastefully executed of the early 2020s. Number 27. Ariana Grande. Here's a wedding dress story that actually started years before the wedding itself. Ariana Grande and Vera Wang reportedly began dreaming up wedding dress concepts together back in 2018 at a Met Gala after-party long before Grande was even engaged. She promised Wang that when the time finally came, she'd call her. And in 2021, when Grande married realtor Dalton Gomez in an intimate at-home ceremony in Montecito, she kept that promise. The dress itself was a custom silk empire waist column gown that channeled old Hollywood, specifically an Audrey Hepburn kind of restraint and elegance. It featured a sculpted neckline, an exposed bra strap closure that gave it a modern edge, and a dramatic plunging back. The finishing touch was a shoulder-length, hand-pleated bubble veil topped with a delicate silk bow, a detail that became one of the most referenced bridal veil silhouettes of the entire decade. Vera Wang later reflected on the design process, calling Grande a genuinely magical creative partner to work with. Small, intimate, and quietly glamorous, this wedding looked nothing like a typical pop star spectacle. And that restraint is exactly why fashion editors still pull it up as inspiration years later. What's striking, looking back, is how much this dress diverged from the public image most people associated with Grande at the time. High ponytail, oversized sweaters, an almost cartoonishly cute aesthetic built around her music videos. The wedding gown stripped all of that away and replaced it with something far more grown-up and cinematic. It's also become something of a template for other pop stars planning intimate, at-home ceremonies, since proof that you don't need a massive guest list or a destination venue to produce one of the most referenced bridal looks of the decade. Grande and Wang's years-long friendship leading up to the dress only adds to why it still feels so effortlessly personal. Number 26, Gwen Stefani. Number 26 brings us to Oklahoma on a working ranch for a wedding that blended West Coast glamour with country charm. In July of 2021, Gwen Stefani married Blake Shelton in an intimate ceremony held right on Shelton's own ranch property, a setting that could not have been further from the arenas and award shows Stefani built her career on. For her ceremony gown, Stefani chose a custom Vera Wang haute silk georgette dress featuring a sweetheart neckline that dipped into a dramatic, sultry plunge. The silk georgette fabric gave the dress a soft, almost weightless movement that suited the outdoor ranch-style setting far better than a stiff, structured ball gown ever could. It's a great example of a celebrity understanding her venue and dressing for it, rather than just chasing the most dramatic silhouette possible. Considering Stefani's entire public identity has been built on bold, distinctive fashion choices, going all the way back to her No Doubt days, choosing something this understated for her wedding said a lot about which version of herself she wanted to show up as on that particular day, and fans loved her for it. The couple had been together for years by the time they finally married, having met while serving as coaches on The Voice, and that long, slow-burn romance seemed to shape the entire tone of the wedding. There was nothing rushed or performative about it. Close friends and family gathered in a genuinely rural setting, complete with a small on-site chapel Shelton had built specifically for the occasion. Stefani's dress fit right into that atmosphere. Romantic but never fussy, glamorous but still wearable on a working ranch. It's a wedding that fashion commentators often point to as a masterclass in dressing for your venue rather than for the cameras. Number 25. Paris Hilton. If any bride on this list understood the assignment when it comes to sheer volume of dresses, it's Paris Hilton. In November of 2021, Hilton married entrepreneur Carter Rome in Bel Air, in what was, without exaggeration, one of the most extravagant, star-studded weddings of the decade. And true to her reputation as a fashion icon, one gown simply was not going to cut it. Hilton changed into 7 separate gowns over the course of the celebrations, including a charming, Cinderella-inspired A-line dress for her first dance and a playful, puffy mini for later in the party. Her primary ceremony look leaned into elegant, classic silhouettes similar to the styles worn by her mother Kathy and sister Nikki at their own weddings, all of which trace their inspiration back to Grace Kelly's legendary wedding gown. It's a lovely bit of generational continuity hiding inside a wedding that otherwise felt like a full-blown Hollywood production. 7 dresses might sound excessive to some, but if you followed Paris Hilton's entire career, you know that restraint was never really the point. The point was spectacle. And on that front, she delivered completely. The wedding weekend stretched across multiple days and multiple venues, with a guest list that read like a who's who of early 2000s and 2020s pop culture, crossing over in one place. Beyond the dresses themselves, Hilton also leaned heavily into nostalgia throughout the celebrations, referencing her own iconic early career style at several points across the festivities. For a woman who essentially helped invent the modern template for being famous, it made complete sense that her wedding would double as both a personal milestone and a full retrospective of her own fashion legacy. Few brides on this list understood the assignment of main character energy quite as thoroughly as Hilton did that November. Okay, quick pause before we keep going, because we're right at the halfway mark and I want to know what you're thinking so far. We've gone from stoop weddings to 7-gown extravaganzas, and honestly, we've barely scratched the surface of what's coming. If you've got a favorite so far, drop the number in the comments right now before you forget, and if a designer you love hasn't shown up yet, stick around because there's a very good chance they're about to. Also, seriously, if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the moment, because we do this kind of deep countdown every single week and you do not want to miss the next one. Alright, back to the list. Number 24. Britney Spears. Number 24 is one of the most emotional entries on this entire list. In June of 2022, Britney Spears married Sam Asghari at her Thousand Oaks home, in her first wedding since regaining control of her own life following the end of her much-publicized conservatorship. Given everything Spears had been through in the years leading up to that moment, the wedding itself carried enormous cultural weight, and the dress needed to match it. Spears turned to Donatella Versace, who personally designed her gown, a moment that felt symbolically important given Versace's own history of championing bold, unapologetic femininity. The dress leaned into glamorous, figure-skimming elegance, the kind of confident silhouette that felt like a direct statement after years of Spears being denied control over her own image. Guests at the wedding included major names across music and entertainment, and the entire event was treated as something closer to a cultural moment than a typical celebrity wedding. For longtime fans who had watched Spears fight publicly for her independence, seeing her walk down the aisle in a dress she chose entirely on her own terms hit differently than almost any other wedding on this list. The guest list itself told its own story, packed with major names from across the pop and entertainment world who showed up to support Spears during what many described as a genuine full-circle moment in her life and career. News outlets covering the event repeatedly noted how different this wedding felt compared to the media circus that had surrounded so much of her adult life up to that point, tightly controlled, deeply personal, and entirely on her own terms from start to finish. The Versace gown, elegant and confident without being flashy for the sake of it, became something close to a visual symbol of that reclaimed independence. And it's a big part of why this entry carries so much more emotional weight than a typical celebrity wedding dress reveal. Number 23. Kourtney Kardashian. Kourtney Kardashian and Travis Barker did not do just one wedding. They did several, including a late-night, unofficial Las Vegas vow swap and a legal courthouse ceremony. But the one that really counts for our purposes happened in Portofino, Italy, in May of 2022. Where the entire multi-day wedding weekend was hosted by Dolce Gabbana itself. Given that connection, it's no surprise the Italian fashion house also designed Kardashian's now famous wedding dress, a one-of-a-kind silk lace and satin mini gown. But the true showstopper wasn't the dress itself, it was the veil. Dolce & Gabbana's own Instagram page revealed that the headpiece featured a large depiction of the Virgin Mary alongside the phrase, "Family Loyalty Respect," a design directly inspired by one of Travis Barker's own tattoos. She completed the look with elegant white gloves and delicate lace pumps. It's a dress that perfectly captures who Kourtney Kardashian is as a bride, unapologetically bold, deeply personal, and completely unafraid to blend high fashion with something as intimate as her partner's own body art. Few wedding dresses on this list carry that much symbolic detail packed into one small, striking silhouette. The entire Portofino weekend became a kind of fashion pilgrimage in its own right, with the Kardashian-Jenner family and a long list of famous guests descending on the Italian coastal town for days of celebration. Given how closely the Kardashian family's public image is tied to fashion and brand partnerships, having Dolce & Gabbana essentially co-host and design the entire event felt less like a coincidence and more like a full creative collaboration. It set a new bar for what a brand-partnered celebrity wedding could look like, blurring the line between personal milestone and full-blown fashion campaign in a way that several other weddings on this list would go on to echo in their own ways. Number 22. Jennifer Lopez. In 2022, Ben Affleck and Jennifer Lopez threw an intimate, tightly guarded wedding ceremony at the actor's home in Georgia, following an earlier, more spontaneous Las Vegas ceremony. Extra layers of secrecy surrounded the event, but that didn't stop Lopez from making headlines with not one, but several jaw-dropping gowns across the celebration, all from Ralph Lauren. For the actual vow exchange, Lopez wore a custom turtleneck column gown, featuring a dramatic ruffle skirt crafted from over 1,000 hand-cut handkerchiefs. Later that evening, she reappeared in a striking gown covered head to toe in thousands of cascading pearls and Swarovski crystals. A full transformation from romantic bride to full glam pacon. It's exactly the kind of dramatic, multi-outfit storytelling that Lopez has built her entire red carpet career on, and her wedding was never going to be any different. The Ralph Lauren partnership would end up being a meaningful through line for the brand across this entire decade of celebrity weddings, something we're going to circle back to later on this very list. What makes this wedding especially notable is the sheer history behind it. Lopez and Affleck had famously been engaged once before, back in the early 2000s, before calling off that wedding and going their separate ways for nearly 2 decades. Reuniting and finally marrying in 2022 turned the entire event into a genuine pop culture moment, and every single gown Lopez wore across the celebrations was analyzed and dissected online almost instantly. The mermaid ceremony gown, in particular, became one of the most searched wedding dresses of the entire year. Proof that sometimes the emotional weight behind a wedding can amplify a dress's cultural impact just as much as the craftsmanship itself. Number 21. Naomi Biden. Number 21 takes us somewhere no other dress on this list can claim to have been worn: the White House. In November of 2022, Naomi Biden, granddaughter of President Joe Biden, married Peter Neal in a ceremony held on the South Lawn, becoming part of a small, historic group of brides to marry at the presidential residence. For the occasion, Biden chose a stunning high-neck, long-sleeved Ralph Lauren gown, handcrafted from exquisite Chantilly lace and featuring a dramatic cathedral-length organza veil. It's a timeless, classic bridal silhouette, the kind of dress that doesn't chase trends because it doesn't need to. Given the setting, that restraint felt entirely appropriate. A White House wedding calls for a certain kind of formal elegance, rather than high-fashion shock value, and Ralph Lauren delivered exactly that. It's a reminder that not every dress on this list needs a dramatic backstory or a viral veil detail to earn its place. Sometimes a beautifully constructed, classically elegant gown in exactly the right setting is more than enough. Security and logistics around a wedding of this nature are obviously unlike anything else on this list, and the South Lawn setting itself carried enormous symbolic and historical weight. Only a small handful of presidential family members have ever married at the White House, which instantly placed this wedding into a very specific, very exclusive category. Given that context, Naomi Biden's decision to go with a classic, unfussy silhouette rather than something more experimental feels like exactly the right call. The dress didn't try to compete with the setting, it simply complemented it, letting the historic backdrop do a lot of the visual heavy lifting. Number 20. Sarah Hyland. Modern Family star Sarah Hyland married Wells Adams in the summer of 2022, and for her ceremony gown, she went with a Vera Wang ball gown that leaned hard into modern romance. The dress featured delicate off-the-shoulder straps, a ruched bodice, and a daring slit that elevated a fairly classic silhouette into something with a little more edge. What's notable here is how Hyland's dress fits into a much bigger pattern across this list. Vera Wang has quietly become one of the defining bridal designers of this entire decade, showing up again and again for brides who want something that feels both traditional and unmistakably current. Hyland's ball gown sits right in that sweet spot, romantic enough for a fairy tale ceremony, but with just enough of a modern twist, that slit, those off-the-shoulder straps to keep it from feeling dated the moment the trend cycle moves on. If you're building a mental list of best Vera Wang wedding dresses of the 2020s, this one absolutely belongs on it. Hyland had been open for years about her health struggles, including a kidney transplant, which made her wedding feel like an especially joyful milestone for longtime fans who had followed her journey closely. That emotional context added a real sense of celebration to every photo released from the day. The dress itself, while not the most maximalist gown on this list, carried plenty of quiet confidence, the kind of silhouette that photographs beautifully in motion, whether Hyland was walking down the aisle or dancing at the reception later that night. Number 19. Nicola Peltz. In 2022, Nicola Peltz married Brooklyn Beckham in a wedding that generated an enormous amount of fashion press coverage, partly because of the family names involved, and partly because of the dress itself. For the ceremony, Peltz wore a Valentino haute couture gown that critics and fans alike still reference as one of the most elegant looks of the entire decade. The dress kept things sophisticated and simple. A square-neck, sleeveless silhouette paired with a cathedral-length veil, embellished with intricate French lace edging. There's a real lesson in this dress for anyone chasing a high-fashion bridal look. It didn't rely on maximalist embellishment or a dramatic silhouette to make an impact. Instead, it paired one striking design element, that minimalist purity, with an incredibly detailed veil, and let those two things do all the talking. In a decade full of thousand-hour beading jobs and elaborate multi-gown reveals, Peltz's Valentino moment proves that sometimes the most talked-about dress in the room is also the simplest one. The wedding itself drew intense media coverage, partly because of the Beckham family name, and partly because of reports about tension surrounding the planning process that circulated widely at the time. Regardless of any of that noise, the dress itself was almost universally praised across fashion publications, with several editors naming it one of the standout bridal looks of the entire year. Peltz has continued to build her own acting and producing career since the wedding, but that Valentino gown remains one of the most frequently referenced entries whenever fashion outlets put together their own retrospective lists of the decade's best celebrity weddings. Number 18. Simone Biles, Olympic gymnastics legend Simone Biles married NFL player Jonathan Owens in 2023, and her wedding dress choice reflected exactly the kind of romantic, storybook energy you'd expect from someone whose entire career has been built on gravity-defying grace. Biles turned to Galia Lahav, the Israeli design house known for combining figure-flattering silhouettes with intensely detailed handcraft. Her gown was an ultra-feminine sweetheart A-line dress adorned with floral appliques, sheer lace, and a subtle shimmer running through the fabric. The bodice featured sheer paneling with exposed boning, and delicate floral straps completed a look that genuinely resembled something out of a storybook romance. Given Galia Lahav's reputation for handcrafting each gown across roughly 120 hours of work, with thousands of individual embroidery elements and threads going into a single piece, it's no surprise Biles chose them. If you're an athlete who has spent your entire life perfecting precision and detail under pressure, it makes sense you'd gravitate toward a designer who applies that exact same philosophy to bridal fashion. Biles married Owens after the two met on a dating app, a detail that made headlines in its own right, given how unusual that origin story felt for two elite athletes at the top of their respective sports. The wedding itself struck a careful balance between glamour and genuine intimacy, and Biles has spoken openly about wanting her wedding day to feel like a true reflection of her own personality rather than a purely public spectacle. The Galia Lahav gown supported that vision perfectly, dramatic enough to photograph beautifully, but rooted in the same kind of soft storybook romance that fans have come to associate with her personal brand off the mat. Number 17. Sophia Richie Grange. Now we're getting into what a lot of fashion editors called the single most talked about celebrity wedding of 2023. Sophia Richie, daughter of R&B legend Lionel Richie, married music executive Elliot Grange in a lavish destination wedding at the Hotel du Cap Eden Rock on the French Riviera, and she did it in not one, not two, but three separate Chanel gowns. The star of the show was her bespoke ceremony dress, a modified version of a look from Chanel's own Spring-Summer 2023 runway collection, altered specifically to fit Richie's personal vision. The gown featured a fitted silhouette that flared gently into a trumpet skirt, topped with a high halter neckline, and the entire piece was covered in delicate embroidered lace and crystal embellishments. Hidden within all that detailing were two small hearts, one right side up, one upside down directly beneath it, symbolizing the couple's bond. The trumpet skirt extended into an ornate train, and Richie's veil was even longer than the dramatic sweep of the gown itself. It's the kind of dress that rewards close-up photography, because every single detail was placed with intention. And honestly, it's easy to see why this became one of the defining bridal moments of the entire year. Richie's rise to becoming a genuine fashion authority in her own right had been building for years leading up to this wedding, largely through her social media presence, where she became closely associated with a specific, effortlessly chic French aesthetic that fans nicknamed after her. That personal brand made the Chanel partnership feel almost inevitable, and the wedding itself was documented extensively across her platforms, giving fans an unusually intimate, real-time look at the celebration as it unfolded. Between the setting, the guest list, and those three meticulously chosen Chanel gowns, it's not an exaggeration to say this wedding single-handedly shaped a huge portion of the following year's bridal fashion trends. Number 16. Taylor Hill. Former Victoria's Secret angel Taylor Hill married private equity investor Daniel Fryer in June of 2023, choosing her hometown of Colorado for a wedding with a distinctly rustic, mountain-inspired energy. For her dress, Hill turned to Etro, the Italian fashion house she had modeled for extensively throughout her career. And the result was a custom, off-the-shoulder gown that felt tailor-made for the setting. The dress featured a high waist cinched with a delicate ribbon belt, paired with a dainty, tiered skirt finished in soft lace frills. The overall silhouette leaned airy and bohemian rather than structured or formal, which suited the open-field ceremony and the surrounding Colorado mountain views perfectly. Hill famously paired the gown with no shoes at all, going completely barefoot down the outdoor aisle to feel fully grounded in her home state. It's a great example of a bride using her professional relationships, in this case, years spent modeling for Etro, to build a genuinely personal, meaningful dress, rather than just chasing whichever designer was trending that particular season. The Colorado setting itself became a huge part of the story here, an open-field ceremony with sweeping mountain views that felt worlds away from the typical European destination weddings dominating so much of this list. Hill leaned fully into that rustic, ranch-inspired atmosphere, rather than fighting against it, and the results photographed beautifully, all soft, natural light and warm, earthy tones. It's a wedding that fashion outlets frequently point to when discussing the broader shift toward more relaxed, nature-inspired bridal aesthetics that gained real momentum throughout 2023. Number 15. Barbara Palvin, another Victoria's Secret angel, another 2023 wedding. Barbara Palvin married actor Dylan Sprouse in a cozy countryside ceremony in Hungary, and for her gown, she chose a Vivienne Westwood design that leaned into vintage-inspired elegance rather than modern maximalism. The dress featured a wide U neckline, a fitted corset bodice, and a subtle, softly draped skirt, finished with a pair of sheer gloves that gave the entire look a distinctly 1960s feel. Even without heavy embellishment or an elaborate train, the gown carried real sophistication, largely thanks to its impeccable tailoring and the way that corset bodice hugged Palvin's frame. Given that Vivienne Westwood built her entire design legacy on subverting traditional silhouettes, it's genuinely interesting to see her label produce something this classically romantic for a bride. It's proof that even the most rebellious fashion houses can turn out a wedding dress that feels timeless, rather than trend-driven. And Palvin's quiet countryside wedding was the perfect canvas for exactly that kind of restraint. Palvin and Sprouse had been together for the better part of a decade before finally tying the knot, and that long history was reflected in just how personal and low-key the entire celebration felt compared to some of the bigger, more publicized weddings elsewhere on this list. Guests described a genuinely warm, family-oriented atmosphere, closer to a traditional countryside celebration than a fashion industry event, despite both partners having significant careers in entertainment and modeling. It's a lovely reminder that even at the highest levels of fame, plenty of celebrities still choose to keep their wedding day feeling small and personal, rather than turning it into a full production. Alright, we are officially 15 dresses deep, and there is still so much more coming, including a wedding that took a year and a half to design the dress for, and the ceremony that basically shut down the internet just last week. If you're enjoying this breakdown, seriously, do us a solid and smash that like button right now. It genuinely helps this video reach more people who love this stuff as much as you do. And if you haven't already, drop a comment telling us who you think is going to take the #1 spot. I promise you, most people are not going to guess correctly. Let's keep going. Number 14. Number 14. Naomi Watts. In June of 2023, actors Naomi Watts and Billy Crudup married during an intimate Manhattan courthouse ceremony, a setting about as far from a lavish destination wedding as you can get. For her dress, Watts chose a ready-to-wear Oscar de la Renta piece, the Sweetheart Water Lily Guipure design, an ankle-length gown covered in delicate embroidered florals. The semi-sheer lace gave the entire look an airy, effortless quality, complete with a dainty hemline that preserved the shape of every embroidered flower along the edge. It's a gorgeous example of how a courthouse wedding doesn't have to mean sacrificing style. Watts didn't need a cathedral train or a custom couture commission to make her ceremony feel special. She just needed a beautifully made dress that suited the low-key, civil nature of the event. In a countdown filled with year-and-a-half-long design collaborations and 1,000-hour hand-beating processes, Watts' choice is a refreshing reminder that sometimes off-the-rack elegance says just as much as full couture. What makes this entry especially charming is just how private the whole affair was. There was no massive guest list, no destination venue, no sprawling multi-day itinerary, just a courthouse ceremony conducted with the same quiet dignity Watts has brought to her decades-long acting career. In an era where celebrity weddings increasingly feel like full media events planned months or even years in advance, Watson Crudup's low-key approach stood out precisely because it refused to play by those rules, and the Oscar de la Renta dress fit that ethos perfectly. Number 13. Nadia Ferreira. Former Miss Paraguay, Nadia Ferreira married award-winning singer Marc Anthony in Miami in January of 2023 in a lavish celebration that called for an equally lavish gown. Ferreira, like Simone Biles before her on this list, turned to Galia Le Havre, and the designer delivered a glamorous ballroom gown befitting the scale of the event. The dress leaned into full princess bride energy, with dramatic volume and intricate detailing that photographed beautifully against the grandeur of the Miami venue. It's Galia Le Havre's second appearance on this list, and honestly, that's not a coincidence. Across this entire decade, the design house has quietly become one of the go-to names for brides who want maximum drama and maximum craftsmanship in equal measure. Between Biles's storybook silhouette and Ferreira's full ballroom gown, you start to see just how versatile Galia Le Havre's design philosophy actually is, capable of romantic subtlety and full-blown spectacle, sometimes within the very same year. Ferreira's own rise to fame had been a whirlwind in the years leading up to this wedding, moving from beauty pageant competitions into a major high-profile relationship almost overnight. And the wedding itself reflected that same rapid, larger-than-life energy. Miami provided the perfect backdrop, glamorous, warm, and unmistakably tied to Marc Anthony's own musical legacy in the city. The ballroom gown Ferreira wore leaned into that scale rather than shying away from it, and it remains one of the most opulent looks anywhere on this entire countdown. Number 12. Rebel Wilson. Rebel Wilson's 2024 wedding to Ramona Agruma, held during a Dolce Vita-themed celebration in Italy, gave us one of the more genuinely joyful entries on this entire list. Rather than one bride in a gown, the couple wore what Wilson described as a duet of ball gowns, both leaning into traditional white bridal silhouettes. Wilson's gown was a princess-style Pronovius dress featuring a corseted waistline and a strapless neckline, with detachable off-the-shoulder sleeves that let her switch up the look partway through the celebration. The choice to have both partners in classic ball gown silhouettes, rather than one bride and one more traditionally suited partner, felt like a quietly powerful statement, and it resonated deeply with fans who appreciated seeing that kind of joyful, unapologetic bridal symmetry. It's easily one of the warmest, most personal weddings on this entire list, and the dress itself, playful yet still classically elegant, matched that energy perfectly. Wilson had been remarkably open with fans throughout her relationship with Agruma, sharing much of their journey publicly at a time when she was also undergoing a major personal health and fitness transformation. That openness carried through into the wedding itself, which felt less like a tightly controlled press event and more like an authentic celebration shared generously with her audience. The matching ball gowns became an instant talking point across entertainment media, not just for their craftsmanship, but for what they represented. Two people choosing to show up for each other in exactly the same visual language. Number 11. Vanessa Hudgens. High School Musical alum Vanessa Hudgens married MLB player Cole Tucker at a lush Mexico resort in December of 2023, and for her dress she pulled inspiration straight from the 1990s supermodel era. She tasked Vera Wang, making her third appearance on this list, with bringing that vision to life. The result was a slinky, light ivory-toned, bias-cut slip dress featuring a cowl neckline and a fully open back, about as far from a traditional white ball gown as you can get. Her veil carried one of the most personal details of any dress on this entire list, custom embroidery reading Mrs. T. December 2nd, 2023. Turning a simple accessory into a genuine wedding day keepsake. It's a bold, fashion-forward choice, the kind of dress you'd expect to see on a red carpet rather than an altar. And that's exactly why it earned so much attention. Hudgens has always used fashion to signal confidence and individuality, and her wedding dress was no exception to that rule. The Mexico resort setting added its own layer of relaxed, sun-soaked glamour to the entire celebration, and Hudgens leaned into that energy across every part of the wedding, not just the dress itself. Guests described a celebration that felt more like an intimate, joyful party than a formal, tightly scripted ceremony, which tracks closely with the laid-back, effortlessly cool public image Hudgens has cultivated for years. The ivory tone of the dress, unusual for a bridal gown by almost any standard, became one of the most talked-about color choices of the entire wedding season that year. Number 10. Chloe Sevigny. Chloe Sevigny married Sinisha Machkovich in a star-studded Connecticut ceremony, and for the occasion, she wore a sheer Jean-Paul Gaultier haute couture gown, designed under the house's current creative director, Glenn Martens. If you know anything about Sevigny's decades-long reputation as one of fashion's most fearless, avant-garde dressers, this dress will not surprise you at all. The gown embraced a genuinely ethereal, almost otherworldly quality, sheer paneling and intricate detailing that made her look, in the words of more than one fashion outlet, every bit a goddess rather than a conventional bride. This is exactly the kind of dress you'd expect from someone whose entire career has been built on subverting expectations rather than meeting them. Where a lot of the brides on this list leaned into classic silhouettes or timeless elegance, Sevigny used her wedding as one more opportunity to make an avant-garde fashion statement. And honestly, that consistency is a huge part of why she's remained such a respected style icon for so long. This was actually Sevigny's second marriage, and by the time she walked down the aisle in Connecticut, she had spent decades as one of independent film and fashion's most respected, quietly influential figures. The guest list reflected that reputation, drawing heavily from the worlds of art, film, and high fashion, rather than mainstream celebrity circles. Glenn Martens, who took over creative direction at Jean-Paul Gaultier and has become known for his own boundary-pushing design sensibility, proved to be an ideal match for a bride who has never once dressed to blend in. Number 9. Anya Taylor-Joy. Anya Taylor-Joy's wedding dress story actually unfolds across two separate ceremonies. For her Italian celebration with musician Malcolm McRae, she commissioned a custom Dior design, a gown embroidered with symbols representing their entire love story, including a hummingbird for love and luck, and a nod to their shared astrological sign, since the two are both Aries and share the exact same birthday, a genuinely rare and meaningful pairing. Her bridal party for the occasion included close friend and fellow Dior ambassador Cara Delevingne, reinforcing just how tightly woven her relationship with the fashion house has become. Beyond that dress, Taylor-Joy also embraced a bold, colorful bridal aesthetic across her wedding celebrations, opting for a beige A-line gown with a straight neckline, embroidered with birds and flowers in dark, moody tones, paired with a bright white veil for contrast. It's a dreamy, almost dark fairy tale approach to bridal fashion that stood out sharply against the sea of pure white gowns elsewhere on this list. And it's exactly the kind of unconventional choice you'd expect from an actress known for embracing offbeat, atmospheric style both on screen and off. Taylor-Joy's relationship with Dior runs deep, extending well beyond a single wedding gown into years of red carpet partnership and brand ambassadorship, which is part of why the custom Couture gown felt so fitting for her Italian celebration. Given her breakout roles in projects with Gothic period or fantastical settings, it made perfect sense that her own wedding aesthetic would lean into that same moody, storybook territory, rather than a conventional bridal white approach. Between the astrological symbolism, the embroidered love story, and that striking beige and dark color palette, this entry stands out as one of the most narratively rich dresses on the entire list. Number 8. Alex Cooper. Podcast host and certified it girl Alex Cooper married Matt Kaplan in 2024, in a wedding that fashion outlets immediately flagged as one of the most defining bridal moments of the entire year. Cooper chose Danielle Frankel, and the dress absolutely delivered on the hype. The luminous A-line gown featured delicate, ballerina-esque spaghetti straps, a straight neckline, and a gathered skirt, all built around a dramatic basque waist, arguably the single biggest bridal silhouette trend of the year. That basque waist detail, where the bodice dips into a distinct V or U shape at the natural waistline, ended up defining an entire wave of celebrity wedding dresses that followed. Cooper's gown walked a careful line between simplicity and feminine grace, proving that you don't need heavy embellishment to make a lasting impact. Sometimes a perfectly placed silhouette detail is more than enough to shape an entire year's worth of bridal trends. As the host of one of the biggest podcasts in the world, Cooper's every public appearance tends to generate massive engagement online, and her wedding was no exception. Within hours of the first photos surfacing, wedding dress designers and bridal boutiques everywhere began fielding requests for the Alex Cooper dress, a phenomenon that speaks to just how much influence modern podcast and social media personalities now wield over bridal fashion trends, a category of influence that traditionally belonged almost exclusively to actresses, musicians, and royals. Number 7. Millie Bobby Brown. Stranger Things star Millie Bobby Brown married Jake Bon Jovi in May of 2024 in a lavish Tuscany, Italy ceremony that fans had been anxiously anticipating for months. Considering she quite literally grew up in front of a global audience, the pressure surrounding her wedding dress reveal was enormous, and it absolutely lived up to the hype. Her custom gown featured a figure-hugging corset bodice, delicate French lace throughout, and a Baroque-style overskirt that added dramatic volume without sacrificing that fitted silhouette underneath. She paired the dress with a long train and a matching lace veil, finishing a look that balanced youthful romance with genuine sophistication. Given the setting, an Italian countryside wedding surrounded by close friends and family, the Baroque detailing felt especially fitting, echoing the ornate architecture and old-world glamour of the region itself. It's a dress that manages to feel both age-appropriate for a bride in her 20s and completely show-stopping at the same time, which is a much harder balance to strike than it sounds. Because Brown has been a public figure since she was barely a teenager, thanks to her breakout role on Stranger Things, this wedding carried an unusual amount of emotional resonance for a global audience who genuinely felt like they had watched her grow up in real time. Fans and fellow cast members alike flooded social media with reactions the moment photos began circulating, and several of her Stranger Things co-stars were reportedly in attendance. It's rare for a wedding dress reveal to feel like a genuine coming-of-age moment for millions of strangers at once. But that's essentially what happened here. Number 6. Olivia Culpo. Former Miss Universe, Olivia Culpo married San Francisco 49ers running back Christian McCaffrey at the historic Ocean House Hotel in Westerly, Rhode Island, and for her gown, she made a genuinely surprising choice. Rather than something overtly glamorous or sexy, Culpo opted for a custom Dolce Gabbana long-sleeve ball gown, deliberately understated for someone with her fashion pedigree. Culpo herself explained the reasoning behind the choice, saying she wanted the dress to feel as serious as the commitment she was making, and that she specifically did not want the gown to exude any kind of overt sexuality. Instead, she wanted it to feel effortless, complimentary, rather than overpowering. The gown was paired with a dramatic 16-foot cascading veil that echoed the grandeur of the New England setting. It's one of the most quietly powerful entries on this entire list. A former beauty queen deliberately choosing restraint over spectacle and letting that restraint become the entire statement. Culpo's Dolce & Gabbana gown is still regularly cited by fashion editors as one of the most iconic celebrity wedding dresses of the decade, precisely because of how counterintuitive that choice was. The New England setting mattered enormously here too. Rather than jetting off to Europe or the Caribbean, Culpo and McCaffrey chose a classic, historic hotel with old-money coastal charm, and the dress was clearly designed with that architecture and atmosphere in mind. Culpo has spent years building a reputation as one of the most consistently tasteful dressers in the celebrity fashion world, and this wedding, understated by her own standards, yet still utterly breathtaking, felt like the definitive statement of that entire aesthetic philosophy. Number 5. Lainey Wilson. Grammy-winning country star Lainey Wilson married Devlin Duck Hodges on October 1st of 2024 in a wedding that felt like the perfect culmination of her career-long relationship with classic Americana style. Wilson revealed it was the first time in her life she had worn a dress, which made her gown choice, a custom Oscar de la Renta creation, feel even more significant. The dress was covered in delicate Japanese cherry blossoms, stretching across the entire gown and continuing right up into a halter neckline. In total, The design incorporated over 1,500 individual faux flowers, alongside more than 20,000 bugle bead and crystal embellishments, an almost unimaginable amount of handwork packed into a single gown. Wilson explained that the cherry blossom motif represented living fully in the moment, a sentiment she said captured exactly what the day meant to her and her new husband. It's a gorgeous example of a designer translating a very personal, almost philosophical idea into physical, wearable craftsmanship, and it's easily one of the most detail-rich gowns anywhere on this entire countdown. Wilson's rise to becoming one of country music's defining voices has been built almost entirely on authenticity. Her bell-bottoms, her twang, her refusal to soften her Louisiana roots for mainstream appeal, so the reveal that she'd never worn a dress before her own wedding day landed as a genuinely touching detail rather than a marketing angle. Oscar de la Renta, a house with deep roots in classic American elegance, turned out to be the perfect partner for that milestone, translating Wilson's personal symbolism into a gown loaded with meaning in every single stitch. Number 4. Lauren Sanchez. Now we're getting into truly historic territory. In June of 2024, Lauren Sanchez married Amazon founder Jeff Bezos in a 3-day wedding extravaganza in Venice, Italy, that pulled in an absolutely staggering guest list. Everyone from Oprah Winfrey to Kim Kardashian to Leonardo DiCaprio showed up for the celebrations. And the dress at the center of it all took an astonishing 1.5 years to design. Sanchez worked directly with Domenico Dolce of Dolce Gabbana on the gown, and according to Sanchez herself, the concept evolved dramatically over that time, starting as a simple, sexy, modern dress idea before growing into something meant to evoke an entire cinematic moment. The final design was a high-necked, corseted lace gown featuring a mermaid silhouette and an incredible 180 individual silk chiffon-covered buttons running down the front. The look was directly inspired by the wedding gown Sophia Loren wore in the 1958 film Houseboat, and Sanchez completed it with Dolce Gabbana Alta Joyeria earrings and a delicate veil. Across the 3-day celebration, she changed into multiple additional looks, including a vintage Alexander McQueen piece and an intricate Schiaparelli cocktail dress. But that Dolce & Gabbana ceremony gown, a 1.5 years in the making, remains the single most talked about detail from the entire wedding. The sheer scale of the Venice wedding turned it into an international news story that extended well beyond entertainment coverage, touching on everything from tourism and local politics to broader conversations about wealth and celebrity spectacle in the modern era. Regardless of where you land on any of that, there's no denying the wedding produced one of the most exhaustively documented, endlessly analyzed bridal fashion moments of the entire decade. Sanchez's willingness to speak candidly with Vogue about the 18-month design process gave fans an unusually detailed, behind-the-scenes look at exactly how a modern couture wedding gown comes together, something most brides on this list have kept far more private. Number 3. Selena Gomez. On September 27th of 2025, Selena Gomez married music producer Benny Blanco at their Montecito home, surrounded by guests like Taylor Swift, Ed Sheeran, and Cara Delevingne. And in true multi-outfit celebrity wedding fashion, Gomez did not stop at one dress. She wore 3 separate custom Ralph Lauren gowns across the celebration. Her primary ceremony dress channeled unmistakable old Hollywood glamour, a bespoke, double-faced silk satin gown featuring hand-draped panels and a high-neck halter, finished with hand-cut lace and a delicate macrame collar. Several bridal experts noted the dramatic plunging back, and the overall silhouette drew clear inspiration from 1940s icon Rita Hayworth. For her second look, Gomez changed into another halter-neck Ralph Lauren gown, this one crafted from lace, featuring an astonishing 300 individually hand-shaped and applied lace flowers, an embroidery process that reportedly took over 200 hours to complete. For the reception, she went shorter, a tulle bodice dress with hand-pleated panels of cotton, silk, and linen voile, designed to feel light and airy for a night of dancing. Given that her close friend Taylor Swift had worn Ralph Lauren for her own engagement photos earlier that same year, fashion insiders couldn't help but notice the pattern forming. And honestly, neither could we. Gomez's journey to this wedding carried its own emotional weight, given how openly she has discussed her health struggles and mental health journey with fans over the years. Watching her reach this milestone, surrounded by some of her closest friends in the industry, felt like a genuinely earned celebration, rather than just another red carpet moment. The choice of 3 separate Ralph Lauren gowns, each serving a distinct purpose across the day, showed just how much thought went into crafting a wedding day narrative, rather than simply picking one show-stopping dress and calling it done. Number 2. Dua Lipa. Coming in at number 2, Dua Lipa and actor Callum Turner actually got married twice in 2026. First, in a quiet, private civil ceremony in London back in May, and then again in June for a full celebration in Sicily, Italy. For the Sicily wedding, Lipa chose a Chanel haute couture gown that absolutely delivered on drama. The dress featured a low back completely covered in crystal embellishments, paired with a long train that was itself covered entirely in feathers, an incredibly bold textural choice that photographed beautifully against the Sicilian coastline. She completed the look with a matching feather headpiece layered over her long veil, tying the entire ensemble together into one cohesive, almost otherworldly silhouette. Between the crystal-covered back and that dramatic feathered train, this gown stands out as one of the most texturally ambitious dresses on this entire countdown. It's proof that even in a decade full of hand-beaded 1,000-hour couture commissions, there's still room for a completely fresh idea. And feathers on this scale had genuinely not been done quite like this before. The decision to hold 2 separate ceremonies, a quiet civil wedding in London, followed by a larger celebration in Sicily, gave Lipa the rare opportunity to have 2 completely distinct bridal moments without ever feeling like she was repeating herself. It also meant her fans got 2 very different windows into the wedding, one intensely private, one gloriously public, which tracks closely with how Lipa has managed her personal life throughout her career. Protective of the quiet moments, but generous and expressive when it comes to the big stage. Chanel's involvement, given the house's decades-long relationship with couture craftsmanship, only added to the sense that this was a gown built to become an instant archive piece. Number 1. Charli XCX. And here we are at number 1, with a bride whose entire wedding turned into its own cultural moment. Charli XCX married George Daniel, drummer of the 1975, in 2025, and true to form for an artist who spent the run-up to that year redefining an entire aesthetic around her, she didn't just wear one wedding dress, she wore 2. At 2 completely different ceremonies on 2 different continents. The first I Do happened at Hackney Town Hall in London, a classic, no-frills civil ceremony, and for it, Charli chose a white Vivienne Westwood mini dress, a sharp departure from the moody, dark aesthetic she'd built her entire public image around in recent years. The off-the-shoulder mini featured a structured corset bodice and a draped, asymmetrical short skirt, paired with a simple tulle veil, white slingback Jimmy Choo heels, and her now iconic oversized black sunglasses. It struck this incredible balance between traditional bridal fashion and her own unmistakable personal style, managing to feel both classically bridal and completely, unmistakably her. Then, almost 2 months later, in the coastal town of Scopello, Sicily, the celebrations evolved into a full destination wedding affair, and Charli's second bridal look leaned into a completely different kind of romance. She wore a custom sheer ivory gown by Danielle Frankel, crafted from fluid silk chiffon, featuring delicate spaghetti straps and an elongated train that floated behind her, creating an almost ethereal quality that felt worlds away from the sharp, structured mini from the London ceremony. Where the Westwood look was all corseted edge, the Danielle Frankel gown was pure, soft movement, proving that a single bride can authentically hold 2 entirely different bridal aesthetics without either one feeling like a costume. It's genuinely rare to see a bride pull off 2 such contrasting silhouettes across one wedding and have both looks feel completely true to who she is, rather than one reading as the real her and the other as a compromise for tradition's sake. Given how much of her recent cultural moment was built around embracing contradiction, glamour and grit, softness and edge, all coexisting at once, closing out this list with a bride who did exactly that with her wedding dresses feels like the perfect way to end this countdown. And there you have it. All 30 of the most iconic wedding ceremony dresses from 2020 all the way through today. From a Brooklyn stoop wedding built on nothing but sentiment, all the way to a pop star who wore two completely different gowns for two completely different ceremonies on opposite sides of the world. This decade has given us an incredible, sprawling history of bridal fashion, and honestly, we're not even close to done. There are more weddings coming this year, more designers waiting for their moment, and we will absolutely be back to update this list the second something worthy shows up. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, first of all, thank you. Genuinely, that means a lot to us. Second, we need to know, out of all 30 of these dresses, which one is your favorite, and which one do you think we got wrong in the ranking? Drop it in the comments below. We read every single one, and we love seeing the debates that break out in there. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button. It genuinely helps more people discover this channel. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now is absolutely the time, because we've got so much more celebrity fashion history coming your way very soon. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you in the next one.